I talked to him for a little bit and I signed the book. And then it was time for them to go because they're the last people. They wanted to usher them out of the room. And they stood up, and all of a sudden the girl goes, wait, 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 I can't leave. I can't leave without saying this. And she broke down in tears and told me about how much Batwoman meant to her as a gay woman, and that it profoundly changed how she saw comics could be in terms of relatability. And right then and there, that was powerful. I'll never forget it. And right then and there, that's when I kind of knew, like, no matter what, we have to have that marriage proposal still be in Batwoman and fight for what we wanted.
What can you tell us about Echolands? Like, what would the elevator pitch be? When would it be out?
I can't say the launch date yet, um, but let's see. How do I describe it? It's a mythic fiction taking place in a reality where any genre is possible. And there's a big mystery involved as to why.
It sounds like you came up with this idea so that you could draw anything possible.
Yeah, partly. And once the reveal is made, hopefully people will go, ah, okay. Because, yeah, I mean, like, we have stuff like, a fantasy character comes from, uh, Wildwood, next to a character that is like a black and white, comes from like a black and white 70s horror comic that's a vampire, and she comes from Horror Hill, and all these things, but all these characters are put together. There's a character named Castrum, from a place called Old Chicago, and he looks like he stepped out of Dick Tracy, So it's like, but once we reveal, the mystery of how this is possible, people are going to go back and hopefully they'll enjoy it enough that they'll reread it and go, I see where these clues are and things like that. It's a big story. Not sure how many issues it's going to be yet. We originally had a set number of issues, but as we started writing, some new ideas came to us with some of the characters that kind of broaden things out for the better, but it also kind of means we're not sure how long it's going to be. So hopefully it's successful. We'll make it to the end.
Sounds epic. I can't wait
Yeah.
to read it. I don't know if it's evident, but I've pretty much owned every work you've ever had.
Nice.
And speaking of that, one of my last two questions is Mick Gray.
Yes.
You once said, like, early on in your career, that you weren't comfortable inking your own stuff.
Yeah.
That you had Mick, inking it, and then obviously, like, you ended up inking your own stuff eventually. What was it like being inked by Mick Gray, working with Mick Gray? And do you have the same taste in music? Because his radio show on Zoom is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a huge music guy. That's one of the things we always were able to connect about, outside of comics subjects was music. He was a guy, he kept like, he was way more into vinyl before I was. Like, when I was young, I was into vinyl records, but he stayed consistently into vinyl records, where I kind of dipped out for a long time and then jumped back in much later.
I can see your background.
Yeah, no, it's crazy with vinyl records. But Mick is probably one of the best inkers this industry has ever had. Unfortunately, I don't know if he gets that kind of recognition. He should. but I think we're, part of the problem is we're living in a time where, especially the last 5 years, that a lot of artists started moving towards inking their own work, or have moved to digital where they don't need an inker. The platform allows them to work in a way where they have control over all that themselves. Early on in my career, I didn't think I could ink my own work because I just didn't have the finesse that he has. I still don't have the finesse he has. There's things today that, I ink, I'm like, well, if Mick would have done that way better than I did. But I've become such a mishmash of things and different styles and techniques that I think it's okay that it might not look the way he would have done it. Even though, it might have been better the way he would have done it. Ultimately, I ended up inking my own work. It wasn't out of a dissatisfaction of working with Mick at all. It was more of a personal growth. Because Mick, like I said, I mean, he's incredible. I mean, just look at the inking work he did with other artists after myself. The stuff he did with Patrick Gleason is a great example, or some of the stuff with Ryan Sook, where he inked a little bit of his stuff too. Just tremendous talent.
I feel like you have to ink yourself exactly because you have so many styles in one go. If you filtered that through another inker, that might get lost in the process.
Possibly, and it wasn't just editorial aspect decision for that, but a personal growth decision. I kind of felt like if I was going to try to push myself into areas that I have gone to since then, there's no way I could do that with an inker, because trying to capture a look, a finished look with a pencil, and then have that translated to inks, it doesn't make a lot of sense. The other thing it has allowed me to do is to be more spontaneous. So what I mean by that is when I was penciling, I have the opportunity to that hand didn't come out right. I can redraw that hand. But when I started inking myself, I very quickly dropped using a pencil. I don't pencil anymore.
I was going to ask.
Yeah, for a long time. So it's this weird situation where it's like a tightrope act, I guess you could say, where it gives me the fluidity and freedom to try different styles on a whim more gut instinct more. But it also allows me to do weird things like, oh, well, that hand didn't come out the way I wanted it to. Partly my own fault because I didn't pencil it. I just went in and inked it. But there's like this weird, fun, but partly self-torture aspect about like, well, how do I make the mistake not a mistake anymore? So there's like this weird sense of learning about it. For me, everything that I do is about learning. What can I learn today? So it kind of came down to that for me. How do I grow? Looking back at some of my favorite artists, all could ink themselves. Some of them would work with inkers on occasion, but they all were capable of doing it themselves. And I kind of felt like, well, if I want to try to reach for that echelon for myself, I kind of had to do it. And so when Promethea started winding down is when that process took place.
Yeah.
There's little bits and pieces inside the tail ends of Promethea where I did some inking bits here and there, where we would I might do a couple faces here or there or whatever, trying to get a handle on things. And during that point, I think I was doing some covers for Marvel, where I'm like, heck with it, I'll try inking this myself and see what happens. One of the reasons why I was so trepidatious about taking on myself was, which became much more evident working on Seven Soldiers, I have a tremor.
Really?
Yeah, it's an inherited thing from, I think, my mom's side of the family.
Your
They
line is
all
so
have
clean.
tremors. Oh no, it's not. That's what I mean. By comparison to Mick, it's not clean. Mick's finesse looks like it's like, are you sure this is inked and not printed? It's like so perfect, you know. But yeah, no, I have a tremor. For a while, I ended up with carpal tunnel because of it. So I didn't realize the tremor was affecting me. In, uh, or that it had really become profound until a certain point, and I started getting carpal tunnel. And this was after I started inking myself. And I also always thought, like, Mick is so good with a brush. He inks mostly with a brush. And I was like, I can never have that kind of control. I tried and I tried and tried. And so now I've kind of grown, over the years, I've grown into being able to use a brush, still not as effective as he is, but I use a combination of tools like brush and pen and other things. But
Yeah, I was gonna say it does look like you mostly ink with a pen
yeah,
for yeah,
yeah, yeah,
especially for civilian scenes.
uh-huh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And then and then that has gravitated to using washes a lot, or a combination of all these different things. But yeah, the tremor, yeah, it's an ongoing issue. That's part of one of the reasons why it does take me a while to get things done, because I just can't move my hand as quickly with the same level of accuracy. Um, so it takes me longer to do stuff. Uh, I ended up having to use acupuncture for a while when
Really?
the problem first started, because I didn't want to have surgery, and that helped me a lot. And then ever since then, I just keep doing, keep my hands stretched out and massaged and all that kind of stuff. But it's a daily thing where you know there I've kind of come to the terms, like, there's no way I would ever have the finesse Mick has purely on that one aspect alone, because of that tremor. There's just, using a brush, there's just no way. So a pen has helped me a lot in that regard, and then I'll combine the two things. So
I mean, if it makes you feel any better about the whole speed thing, a lot of the greatest comics artists who ever lived were not the fastest, and it's just lost to history that somebody like Art Adams or Michael Golden or
yeah,
Jim Steranko
yeah,
like
yeah,
couldn't maintain a monthly schedule either, and that's
yeah,
just lost now. That's the
yeah.
thing. Like in the long run, it doesn't matter.
Exactly, exactly. That's why, when that guy said to me today about being, evergreen, the work being evergreen matters a lot. You know, to have some sort of longevity of a career, you kind of need that when you're somebody like me, who I can't do a page a day. So
And I guess my last question was going to be, are you serious that Batman Black and White #1 said you do not do thumbnails and layouts? But I think you just answered it.
yeah,
That
yes, that's true.
that's crazy. So
I haven't.
how do you do something like this with no thumbnails or layouts?
Um, well, uh, I guess there's a little bit of a misconception. I don't do pencils.
Okay.
So I don't do thumbnails, and I don't pencil anything. So there will be some form of layout, but I don't pre-think it out. I'll have an idea loose in my head of what I want it to be. Quite often it doesn't match what I see in my head. And one of the reasons why I stopped doing thumbnails a long time ago, even on Promethea, I just didn't do them, was because I have this weird quirk in my personality where I would do the thumbnail and like the way the balance was on the thumbnail, but then when I would go to execute it on the page, I just couldn't capture the same thing. And I would struggle with that. I would fight to capture that when doing the actual art. The art is telling me, knock it off. This isn't working. Do something else. Modify. And so I started getting to a point where that frustration was too much and said, okay, I'll just let the thumbnail, the loose idea, live in my head. And as I work it out on the board, putting a chicken scratch of like, this is the shape of the panel or whatever, figure B here, it allowed me to be more spontaneous with those decisions. And I don't know, let the art tell me what it needed to do. So, which is fascinating when we're kind of backtracking a little bit about the writing for myself. So like the writing for myself, I'll put in some of these scripts, a layout idea. Like here's a design idea that we could do. And a lot of times I throw it out, I'll do something completely different when it comes to actually drawing it, because it ends up not functioning the way I think it will, the way I see it, So thumbnails kind of became an enemy.
Oh,
Yeah.
To
adhere to, I would try to adhere to them too much when uh, the practicality of doing the work doesn't match the thumbnail. So it's better to let the ideas sit in my head and see what happens. There's probably some level of risk to that, or you're halfway through a page or whatever, and like, oh, this other idea I have is so much better, but you just like move on, file that away.
Perfect is the enemy of done.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you feel when a fan tells you that something you did changed their life?
It's always kind of strange. It's cool to work on something that affects people in that way, but when you're working on it, you don't think about that sort of stuff. You don't think about like, this is going to do this and have this resonance. Hopefully you come up with ideas that will speak to somebody. So like as example, this Batman black and white thing, I got a email from a fan who read it, who was a ER doctor and was touched by the story, and so it brought him to tears, and you're like, whoa, that's not what you don't anticipate that sort of thing. So it always kind of is gratifying that you can affect somebody, because you are creating art. You want to be able to connect with people and hopefully have them think about things or whatever. But when you hear it, it's always like, it's humbling. I feel that's the word for it. It's humbling that something I worked on creatively could speak to somebody in a profound way. Because when you're doing the work, you're not thinking about it in those terms. You're hopefully thinking that it's hopefully it has some thoughtfulness to it. That's the most that you're trying to get out of it, is, does it have something to say? It's not just a slugfest of whatever, it's saying something. But you never think about that it's going to hit somebody emotionally. A great example of that, one of the most profound moments, was when I was working on Batwoman.
Mm-hmm.
And there was some controversy behind the scenes about the marriage proposal idea. I had already drawn the scene. We had written it and drawn it. And upper management was like, well, we don't know if we want a wedding. We don't know if we want to go there. And final decisions hadn't been made what to do. And I remember going to Morrison Con. I was a guest at Morrison Con. And they had this whole setup where get to sign books for people. And this guy and this girl were the last in line for me. And they came up and they put down a copy of Promethea. And they were arguing, standing there arguing. And I remember her saying something like, well, I don't know if I even like this book. Why should he even sign it? I don't even know if I like it. And the guy, it seemed like he was either a brother or a friend, was like, "You're going to get this book signed. You'll like it. Just get it signed." And they're sitting there arguing. And it was like one of those situations where they sit down and talk to you for a few minutes. It was like kind of like this interaction, a nice interaction with the fan, instead of them just sign and walk away. And I'm like, just sit down, you know? And so I'm like, I hope you like it. I think you'll like it. If you don't, that's okay. Give it away to somebody, you know? I talked to him for a little bit and I signed the book. And then it was time for them to go because they're the last people. They wanted to usher them out of the room. And they stood up and all of a sudden the girl goes, wait, I can't leave. I can't leave without saying this. And she broke down in tears and told me about how much Batwoman meant to her as a gay woman, and that it profoundly changed how she saw comics could be in terms of relatability. And right then and there, that was powerful. I'll never forget it. And right then and there, that's when I kind of knew, like, no matter what, we have to have that marriage proposal still be in Batwoman and fight for what we wanted. You know, because I just realized how important the work can be sometimes at that moment, you know?
Well, if that's the case, then I can't let this interview end without saying, as a then 18-year-old Roman Catholic, Promethea number 17 absolutely changed my life, put my mind at peace with so many things that I was wrestling with at the time. And is a yeah, so thanks to you and Alan and Mick for that.
No, it's gratifying, and you know, I'm humbled that the work spoke to you in that way. Promethea seems to be, in particular, have reached a lot of people uh, and had an effect on them, either philosophically or helped them through a tough time in their life. You know, and I think Batwoman is kind of doing some of that for some people, or had done that for some people. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, it was me wrestling with the whole idea that one religion is right, but then I knew all of
Oh,
these people from different religions, and I'm like, wait, this doesn't make any sense. So
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Cool.
Is there anything else you want to plug or give a shout out to?
No, other than, you know, I'll say thank you to all the people I've worked with, you know, over the years, all the great writers you've discussed at length, but, you know, various colorists like Jeremy
Jeremy
Cox and
Cox.
Jose Villarrubia, of course, Dave Stewart,
Yeah.
who is my partner in this for the long haul. Mick Gray and all the editors, Todd Klein.
Todd Klein.
You know, Todd Klein is my go-to guy. Will, it'll be a sad day whenever he decides to stop doing comics. I don't know what I'll do if I lose Todd Klein. But
greatest letterer who ever lived.
Yeah, and you know, of course, Haden Blackman and all the, you know, great collaborators. It's a team effort. You know, this stuff couldn't happen if it wasn't for everyone kind of coming together.
Thank you, Mr. Jim Williams. This was awesome.
Thank you.
And